It is Tuesday night in East Lansing. Welcome to SpartanMag Live. Welcome to the call-in show. Thanks to everybody for being on time. I was running a little late as usual, getting some notes together. Come on in, file in nicely. Hope everybody's having a great holiday season thus far. Hope everybody is doing great wherever you are in the Spartan world today. Hope you're awesome. Hope you're healthy. And hope we're all supporting each other and doing a good job with the things we do. Happy holidays. SpartanMag.com. Football season is over, but it never ends, does it? There's always talent acquisition, player acquisition. Last week we had a great show here at SpartanMag Live talking about Michigan State's incoming recruiting class for 2021. And it's not finished yet. We might get into that a little bit. Michigan State basketball taking it on the chin, a loss on Sunday against Northwestern. And then we've got a game Christmas Day against the Wisconsin Badgers.
To send a voicemail, press 2. To accept, press 1.
Old Tuck, are you there?
I am. You want me to let you set the table, Comp?
Yeah, we'll
hang around.
Yeah, we'll set the table a little bit. Last time we did that, we had some people commenting that I was leaving people on hold too long. We certainly don't want to do that, but we've got Old Tuck, one of our favorites. He's going to be leading off tonight, talking about Michigan State sports. Whatever he wants to talk about, that's what we'll talk about. We also have some mailbag questions that were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board. We got questions covering football, basketball, talent acquisition, transfer portal, those type of things. It's December 22nd, the year 2020. Football season just ended in mid-December, but still a lot of things to talk about in terms of football, basketball also. So let's go out to Old Tuck right now, an old veteran of the Seaway Conference from Ludington, Michigan. He's calling today from, I think, from Austin, Texas, by way of Ludington.
I'm calling from Austin.
From Austin?
Yep, you're exactly right. And I've got my dad, my 71-year-old dad here, who he came through Mason County Central, Scottville, Michigan, which is the home of Mike Hankwitz, who I think might be up for the Broyles Award this year in his, I think, 51st year of coaching Division I college football. But anyway, the first thing I wanted to say, Comp, and thanks for allowing me to jump in. I know some people think you treat me bad, but I'm not a millennial. I can wait my turn, let you set the table. That Don Brown defense, he's gone as supposedly, and the steel curtain, Don Brown and that vaunted defense.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the next guy that comes in, though, is going to pitch a bunch of shutouts next year.
Guaranteed.
Maybe will be the best defensive coordinator maybe that we've seen yet in college football.
Well, Barwas taught us to drink chocolate milk, which is a true thing. But Barwas, and they're changing the weight room, and you have Gaddis, and you had McElwain, you had Nussmeier, you had and Don Brown. Who was the guy?
I can't wait to see who they get. Person. Don can go back out east now and be ornery when he comes home from work with his wife. Would you make me a sandwich? How you doing today, Don? But anyway, he was a good little guy. He had a good 5-year run there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure the next guy will be even better.
The best. The next one's got it figured out. No question about it. The next defensive coordinator. The next defensive coordinator at the University of Michigan will be the best coach in the history of the sport. That's all guaranteed.
Yeah. You can put Bud Foster aside and Mickey Andrews and all of them. This guy will be far and away the best defensive coordinator college football has seen.
That's fine. They'll get him right out of the pumpkin patch. It'll be fine.
That's right. That's right. So just a couple quick things. I know Kelly Spartan. He likes the airwaves, so I don't want to crowd his time. He's got a lot of good stuff that he brings too. But this Harold Joyner, I can't help but say he reminds me, and I think he's about 6'3", 6'4", 225. Leroy McFadden.
Yeah.
Who came out of, I think, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, was about that same size.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hoping that Harold is just as productive or maybe even more. Excited about him. And then I'm going to just switch to basketball, kind of more of a serious question here. It just seems like our defense, especially as guys are getting to the goal real easily on us, I wonder if they're going to pare down and kind of phase Kithier and bang him a little bit and go with Marble and maybe even a little bit more Sissoko, because it just seems like there's a lot of uncontested things at the rim. And I know you you understand the tightening of the screws that Izzo always does. So I'm curious, and if you want to answer it later, if you want to start with football, that's fine. But I'm curious your thoughts around what they might do there to shore up some of that. It just seems like there's some big avenues going to the hole.
All right, hold on a second. Don't go anywhere. First of all, the Leroy McFadden thing, people that are watching, they won't recognize that name, a lot of people. That was the recruiting class early in the Saban era, around the time of Cedric Irvin. It might have been the exact same class. And Leroy McFadden was what today would be considered a 4-star recruit out of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. You're right, went to Milford Prep Academy in Connecticut. I think he had been committed to Nebraska earlier, back when Nebraska was great. I think Nebraska was in there somehow. Anyway, Michigan State got him. It was considered a big recruiting coup at the time. Came in, spent 1 year in the program. I don't think maybe he got a couple of carries. I can't really remember, but was out of the program within 2 years.
He got a few totes, but not many.
Not many. Yeah. Big guy, big frame, never really got on the field. Had some off-field things he had to get straightened out. That won't be the problem with Harold Joyner. But the point is well taken. Just because somebody is 6'3", 215, 220, looks real good, in the T-shirt camps and on film. And I saw some video of him doing round off back handspring, back handspring, back handspring, back handspring, back somersault. And I mean summy. Not fair what kind of athlete he is. But at some point, you have to have the vision, the cutting ability, some physicality, things that I never had, But being 6'3", 215, I mean, he was third string, fourth string at Auburn, possibly for a reason. Not the same size, but Larry Caper was 5'11" and looked wonderful and got a lot of carries as a freshman. And his role kind of was reduced as he went along. Madre London, not the same type of athlete. But if someone's third or fourth string, he's got to come in. He's got some work to do. Now, he's not coming in to ride the bench, and Michigan State didn't bring him in to ride the bench, so he will have every opportunity. But for people to look at him and see the ranking and see what he looks like and just assume 1,200 yards, no, some work needs to be done, and Leroy McFadden is a good example of that. You remember, I think you're coming from the same wavelength as I am. Good, hey, if you're a Michigan State fan, it's great to have him in the program. Adds to the talent pool. That's great, but don't put him in the Hall of Fame just yet. Wait and see. But there'll be some competitions going on there. I don't know what that means for Elijah Collins. Elijah Collins is really an interesting, subplot, not even really a subplot to the season that just finished. Because, everybody knows he was just a couple of inches away from 1,000 yards last year as a redshirt freshman. And then, you saw what happened this year. And I think we've got some questions in the mailbag area about that, but Joyner's coming into that situation.
Yeah, I'll let you go.
All right.
But one other thing I wanted to say is since this program was born here, in live video, eventually you got to bring in like Izzo does, that squeeze box or something around the holidays where you're playing maybe a carol or two on this show at the end of it or something,
Careful what you wish for. Because you don't want that. I'm not as talented as the maestro, Tom Izzo.
No, he's good.
With the right amount of holiday cheer, I think anything's possible. But careful what you wish for. But I appreciate you asking for that. And Izzo played it last night. Izzo played the accordion last night, and he did it virtually via Zoom. Of course, he couldn't do it at his usual old haunts over at Reno's East. That's where they usually have the Izzo show. We can't be there as part of it. You people as fans can't be there. Listening to it on the radio. I didn't hear that part last night when he played the accordion, but it certainly is a great tradition, and it's something to really cherish because it's not going to go on forever, right, Old Tuck?
That's cool. Yeah.
All right, Old Tuck, you go off.
Happy holidays. Thanks for letting the old bell cow kick it off.
All right, there's the bell cow. You keep Austin weird for us now. You keep Austin weird. There he goes, Old Tuck.
All right,
there he goes. Say hello to your dad. Merry Christmas, happy holidays to the Old Tuck family down in Austin. Thanks to Don coming in big with personal sponsorship. My bell's over there. I'm not going to ring it. I don't know if this works or not. I can't hear it. It does not come through my earphones, but people tell me it does work. So thanks a lot, Don. Really appreciate that. If I try to get the bell, I could knock the whole thing down, so I'm not going to do that. All right, let's go to the mailbag a little bit. Go ahead and give us a call if you want to get involved here. You see the number. And go to question number 1. Muddy out of Frankenmuth, Michigan asks, what is your opinion of the 3 transfers the football staff has brought in so far? Now, we just talked about Joyner a little bit, and he, I just talked a little bit about, lowering the expectation levels, but now I'm going to turn them back up a little bit. With all that ability, yeah, you have to wait in your second or third string at Auburn. They've got great talent there. Michigan State, a little bit low on productivity there at running back. You can see that. Connor Hayward, he'll still be around. Elijah Collins will be around. Brandon Wright is an interesting one. He had some good film on defense in high school. And late in the season, his carries, of course, went off the cliff a little bit. I've not heard anything along these lines, but I wonder if he may get a look if he stays around in the spring on defense. Michigan State needs linebackers. He was a physical guy in high school. He's a running back. He would have good speed at the linebacker position. A lot of those things we don't know. We won't know until we go another couple of weeks to find out what's going on with transfers. I mean, it's really a strange time for Michigan State football. The exit meetings, Mel Tucker meeting with players, finding out, the players are finding out where they stand with the coaches finding out what the players are thinking, but basically the players are telling them, the coaches are telling them what vision they have for each individual player. And some of those guys are being escorted to the transfer portal, being told that the best chance for them to play if they want to play college football is probably going to be elsewhere. These are hard conversations to have. They're honest conversations. And people have thought in the past that maybe that's something Mark D'Antonio should have done to kind of cut some fat out of the program. D'Antonio was always hesitant about doing that. He felt that if he recruited somebody, he wanted to stay loyal to them. And if they didn't turn out to be good players, he felt that was on him. It's hard to win at the highest level with that type of situation. What they're doing right now at Michigan State, they've done at Alabama and some other places. At Michigan, they called it a meritocracy. The thing is, if you start to lose a little bit, like Michigan did last year, it can become a rudderless ship real quickly. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. You look at what Indiana has done. Indiana only has about 12 or 13 scholarship slots this year for their recruiting class because they've had such little attrition. Reminds me of Mark D'Antonio's first few years at Michigan State. Attrition level was so low, they started winning. Everybody was happy to be a part of it. And Michigan State ended up a couple of years with 17, 18-man recruiting classes, which is good. On one end, it's great you don't have attrition. On the other hand, if you've got an 18-man class and now you lose a third of it, most people, you're going to lose a third of your recruiting class is the way it usually goes. 33% attrition is a passing grade. So you're keeping 12 out of 18. A couple guys get injured, a couple more guys don't make it. It's real easy to get down to like a 5-man senior class if you're bringing in small recruiting classes. That's what Saban has always tried to avoid at Alabama, and he's done it successfully. Michigan State is following a similar template. Can Michigan State be a family atmosphere and really win the hearts and minds of the players while also having a meritocracy? That's difficult to do. That's what Michigan State's going to try to do. Under D'Antonio, they had the family atmosphere, had the hearts and minds. They won, but they were, kind of went a little haywire at the end. Indiana, hearts and minds. They're all excited about the coach. Now they're bringing in a 12, 13-man recruiting class. Have to wait and see. Iowa looked like it was a nice family atmosphere on the outside. Didn't turn out that way, but they've managed to just keep trudging along. Wisconsin, no one's really sure what's going on up there, but they're pretty solid, aren't they? So, Old Tuck was asking about basketball and driving to the hoop a little bit. Michigan State allowing that on defense. I'll get back to that question in a minute, but let me finish some thoughts on the incoming players. A lot of people in the chat area are asking about Russo, quarterback transfer from Temple, Joyner, the running back, Horst, the offensive tackle from Arkansas State. I've not watched film of Horst yet at Arkansas State. Today, I spent a lot of time going over some film of Russo. Went over it last night also. Here's Russo. These are cut-ups. This is every pass that he threw during the first half of their game against Memphis. That was back October 24th. And I've not cut up the second half yet. Maybe we'll do that on a show coming up at a later date. But this is every single throw, plus a couple quarterback runs. Russo, interesting guy. 59% his career percentages. 6,000 yards, 44 touchdowns, 32 interceptions. This year it was completing 68% of his passes, 9 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Has never quite gotten away from the interception bug. In this game, there were 3 interceptions, not counting a 2-point conversion interception. And 2 of them were the fault of receivers, and one was his fault on a deep route, thinking that his receiver had a half step on a DB going down the sidelines.
Call from
Nils.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Talking about Russo here a little bit, Nils. We'll get with you in a second. But the interceptions against Memphis, you'll see a couple of them. When I watch Russo, good accuracy on the short stuff, especially the bubbles, the flares, the swings. A couple of times in these films, you'll see him putting it right on the hands, allowing a running back to get forward out of the backfield. Can get hot with some downfield throws. Good accuracy. Last week we were looking at his highlights, and a lot of quarterbacks can put together a great highlight film. I wanted to put together something where it shows every single pass that he attempted, so you see the interceptions, the incompletions. Giving you a look at that right now. We'll be talking about him the entire offseason and into the spring, and we certainly look forward to that. But Nils Deco, let's bring in Nils Deco, formerly of the Horn in Austin, Texas. He is an astute observer of everything Michigan State athletics. Nils, how you doing, my man? Nils Deco. Are you still there? I think he might have hung up. Dropped him. We'll get Nils back on the horn in a second. As far as Russo goes, you know who he reminds me of a little bit? The way that he, can complete a lot of passes, all the different throws with some mobility, can get hot, but then, has a little trouble keeping it going. And his build is similar. That if the guy I'm going to mention, if you put 20 pounds on him, looks like him a little bit. Reminds me of Keith Nickel a little bit. He's heavier than Keith Nickel. Upper body weight when he moved to wide receiver and became a real strong dude. But as a quarterback, reminds me of that a little bit. And competition this spring, it'll start this spring, Peyton Thorne and Russo. We've not heard anything from Theo Day yet. And it's kind of uncomfortable to talk about someone like Theo Day that's a sophomore and wonder what he's going to do. I mean, in the old days of college football, you know how it was. I mean, if you're in school, you're in school until further notice. Now it's like people are waiting for the initial notice. It's not great, but it's understandable. Horst, the offensive tackle from Arkansas State. My guess is Horst might be the most likely of the 3 to start more games throughout the course of the season. I don't mean to handicap it so quickly, but hey, Jim Curtis. Let's see if I can do the horn here. Last offseason, my handicap was that Rocky Lombardi would start the season, but by the end of the season, Peyton Thorne would be the starter. That's the way it turned out. When I turned in my depth chart for the Athlon's season preview, when I entered in the top 20, the depth chart, the top 22 players, I had Peyton Thorne.
Call from
Kelly Spartan.
to accept, press 1.
Hey, Kelly Spartan from Detroit, Michigan. Are you on the line?
Hey, Comp.
Hey, great to have you. I'm going to finish
Can you hear
one. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, sir.
I was going to finish one more thought. I had Peyton Thorne as the starting quarterback for the depth chart that I turned into Athlon's last June. I didn't necessarily think he would start the first game, but I thought he'd be the starter at some point in the season. That being said, Lombardi ended up being better than I thought he would be, but still not quite good enough to hold on to that job. Now he's in the transfer portal, and certainly wish Rocky Lombardi well. This year going into the spring, we will know more during spring practice. We will get a chance to see the green-white game, hopefully, and we'll have a better idea of what Russo looks like in comparison to Peyton Thorne. We will see how Peyton Thorne improves in that spring game. Right now, going into the spring game, I'm kind of guessing, Russo, he didn't come in here to ride the bench, and Michigan State didn't bring him in here to ride the bench. They brought him in here to create a competition. Do I want to go ahead and say 51% chance Russo starts? Maybe. I might change that during spring practice. But Russo's going to have to cut down on some of these mistakes if he's going to hold off Peyton Thorne, I think, for next year. For Thorne, he's a sophomore. Really, he's still in Theo Day. And you've got Hampton Fay coming in. Might not be ready yet. So with Lombardi going out, you've got Thorne. When you've got Russo and he wants to come to your place, you've given yourself a competition. They've recruited a competition. It's going to be a good competition. It's probably good for the program. I think it's good for the program, but it's going to be fun. Kelly Spartan out of Detroit, Michigan. What's on your mind today?
Hey, I'm sorry I called in a little. I haven't listened to the show yet, so I'm not sure what you covered. But I do have something that I've been pondering about how the tight end situation has been going. Have you talked about that yet?
Not yet.
Okay, so is it just me, or I've noticed that Mel and Co haven't really they haven't really recruited like blocking tight ends, or they've got tall guys, but like just from looking at the program, I don't really see any. Like, I see a lot of weapons they can use to catch the ball, but, like, they keep talking about running the ball. And, like, I don't see anybody that really jumps out to me as a guy who's going to move a really big linebacker or a DN if they need it. Like, they may be able to catch a safety or something, like, in space. But, I mean, I know our guys aren't small tight ends, but, you know, I haven't seen not one guy that's going to be like a Yackle, like a 208-pound offensive tackle guy that's not quite big enough, but they put him a tight end for the running game. Like, do you think they're just based on tight ends as like a big receiver, or are we going to get one of those?
They want the tight end to be one of those consummate, outstanding dual threat tight ends that can block and do some things downfield. Maybe one of the tight ends be more of a slippery guy that threatens the seam. The other guy maybe more of a possession guy that might be more of a blocker. You know, all things being perfect, you would like two guys you can load up the train and run behind on 3rd and 1. They wanted that. The previous staff wanted that when they recruited, what was the guy's name? Noah Davis, the guy that transferred out last year. Adam Burgors came in primarily as a defensive end. They moved him to tight end last year around bowl time because they were so low on tight ends. Well, this year they were low on tight ends and defensive ends, kept him at tight end, played a little bit earlier in the year, but his playing time diminished as the season went along also. He's a bigger guy. You'd have thought he would have been like a factor as a blocker, but didn't really see it turning out that way. Might have dropped a pass once in a game, or was it during a warm-up? I was watching him during warm-ups once. Anyway, I think late in the year, Evan Morris, the walk-on kicker from Ovid Elsie, got on the field 1 or 2 plays against Penn State instead of Burgorst. I don't know if Burgorst traveled to Penn State, didn't notice, but it's hard to know where he stands right now. So they bring in Cam Allen out of Texas. Seems like a little bit more of a slippery receiver type. You're hoping to turn him into a blocker. You still have Matt Dotson around, and Matt Dotson, wants to be the guy. But we talked about it last week with when Ron Armstrong was on, that too often Dotson has kind of made some false steps as a blocker, gave up some movement on one of those 2nd and 10 incompletions against Penn State, which ended up hurting Michigan State in that game. So I'm going through the entire roster of tight ends, and none of them are the guy you're talking about. Yes, Jay Johnson wants the tight end to be an important part of the offense. They will feature it when they get their guys. But last spring, I would have expected them to go to the portal last spring and bring in a tight end last year. Didn't happen. Maybe they looked, didn't find their guy. Signed 1 this year. And when they signed Allen, they said they were going to sign 2. They told Allen they were going to sign 2. They had the commitment from the kid who ended up decommitting and signing with Pittsburgh. Renda, I think was his name. But he was more of a former quarterback type of guy, not really like, an ornery, snot-slinging tight end, not really, from central casting type of blocking guy. Maybe he'll turn out to be that type of guy at Pittsburgh. I'm not sure. Point is, they told Cam Allen they're going to sign 2. They signed 1. Do they continue to look for one in February? We've not detected that. I would really be surprised if they go through the whole offseason without getting a tight end from the transfer portal. I have to believe they're scouting tight ends right now.
I have another question, Tom, because I'm not sure if you want to go on the speculation corner right now. You got your speculation glasses on right now, Tom?
Let me put them on. I All right,
needs to put.
got the speculation glass on. Let's go ahead. Let's speculate.
Okay, so I want to speculate that we are going to get 2 new coaches this offseason.
Okay.
For 2 different reasons.
All right.
One is harkening back to some discussion on time, but it's just special teams was unremarkable this year, and it didn't seem like there was any real improvement. And I'm not sure if that was just because some of the guys who were on special teams who were playing there were just space cadets, or they were freelancing too much. But it just seems like even back to the old regime, special teams has just been a problem for a number of years. And I would think that it couldn't have gotten any worse, but it's, never say never. Like, I really do think, and the reason why I say this is because, not just because of the play, but because when Mel got here, I don't think he actually had enough time to look for all the coaching staff he would have wanted had he had an off season to do it. So I also think that maybe some of these guys were here just placeholders because he couldn't find anyone better. But I do assume that if Tressel does leave, that will make room for a reasonable explanation for, well, we want to shake some more things up because we really didn't have time to put things in place we wanted to. That's what I foresee happening. Where do you see? Am I crazy, or are you seeing what I'm talking about?
If we knew Mel Tucker better and his track record in terms of retaining coaches or letting them go, it'd be a lot easier to answer that question. We all knew that D'Antonio didn't let coaches go. George Perlis was that way also. There's no mode of operation with Tucker right now. I've heard from the inside that, they've told the players that, play to compete, or compete to play, compete to play, compete to stay. You keep competing if you want to stay here. I've heard the players have gotten the idea that the coaches are under the same expectation of accountability. You have to keep cranking it out too if you want to stay. Sometimes well over $1 million. And with Tressel's name and some good years on the resume at Michigan State, I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes a coordinator someplace. And Michigan State's not going to pay a safeties coach over $1 million. They just won't match it. So I think Tressel is marketable, and I think that could happen. Ross Ells, the special teams coach, what happened with the 2 punt returns that returned for touchdown. Michigan State changed some of the personnel after some of those errors. Not sure how much of that. I mean, ultimately it comes down to the coaching, right? I know that, way back in the offseason, a lot of people were impressed with the work that Els was trying to do over Zoom in terms of coverage concepts, just with some creative things he was doing via Zoom to demonstrate where people needed to be and so forth. Of course, that only goes so far. You have to compete and get it done on the field. Allowing 2 punt returns for touchdowns is extremely rare. You know that. And not good. So, the thing I remember is when Bobby Williams, I think it was year number 1, when they played Central Michigan. Remember when that same dude for Central Michigan, I think his name was Larry King. This might be before your time. Central Michigan had one guy that blocked 3 punts in the same game. Michigan State won a game while having 3 punts blocked. That was, what was Perlis' son? Pat Perlis. Pat Perlis was the special teams coach at that time. Now, I can't remember if he held on for another year or if they jostled some of those jobs and responsibilities around throughout the course of the season or in future seasons. But, when it happens twice like that's not good. To answer your question, I'm not sure. But it's my understanding they're on notice.
So it's like you said, if Tressel does leave, who will we get? Who's your top 3 names right now for replacement safeties coach?
I don't really have anyone off the top of my head. Safeties coach, on paper, you think about it being a 2-player job, but at Michigan State in a 4-2-5, you're really coaching 3 players. Coaching safeties is a bigger job than coaching linebackers. You've got 2 linebackers on the field, you've got 3 safeties on the field because one of the nickel backs is basically like a safety. And the way Michigan State's doing it, someone like Michael Dowell has to know how to do all 3. He plays some free safety, some strong safety. Well, actually, he's more strong, but he also comes in and plays the nickel. And, Xavier Henderson plays the free safety and strong safety. So those guys are rotating around. Someone like Dowell having to know all 3 positions. That's a lot on the plate of a safeties coach. I I don't have anyone in mind. If Tressel were to move on, I don't have anyone in mind as to who might be that safeties coach. It'd be someone from Tucker's recent past. One thing about Tucker being a young coach, the advantage of a young coach, among other things, is his peers, the guys that he's kind of come up with. He has a lot of networking at various places with young coaches. As a coach gets older, like Mark D'Antonio got older, Perlis became older, when it came time to replace coaches, when you looked for younger coaches, it might not have been someone that you've coached with in the past. You know, Perlis tried to go younger late in his career, around 92, 93, brought in Kip Waddell, who's a high school coach out of Cincinnati. And Waddell wasn't here very long and Perlis was fired, but it's not like Perlis was going back to someone who had been a GA with him at some other stop. So the older you get as a coach, it's harder to bring along your boys. Tucker's young enough that he's got a lot of young people out there. Like when Saban was hired, he had people that he had coached with or touched that he'd crossed paths with, like Dean Pease, Gary Tranquil. Now, Tranquil was not young, but it's someone that Saban knew well. Of course, Charlie Baggett was on his first staff, and he kept plugging in his own guys. So Tucker's going to have his own guys. I don't know who they are, but he'll have his own guys, and when that time comes.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to pick your brain, Comp, man. You got a wealth of information. You don't like to throw too much out there unless you have hard facts. But every once in a while, we'll try to trip you up, see if you give us a nugget.
There's some questions coming up here. People wanting to know other things. I think we might be able to get to them. A lot of stuff right now. It's all speculation glasses. So, but it's sports. It's okay to speculate. It doesn't really matter, right? It's not like It's not like that real stuff that makes everybody mad out in the real world. We don't talk about that.
Before I go off the phone, Comp, give me a reason to believe in us beating Wisconsin Friday.
Ooh. Wisconsin Badgers.
It's always about ball, team defense. And I think another thing is what's about 4 games of film that we had at Michigan State at Northwestern. There wasn't a lot of film. And one game's against Pine Bluff, which is probably the worst team in all Division I. The other team is against Chicago State, probably the second worst team in all Division I. And then they blew the game against Pitt because Capel knew what Collins was going to do. That was the old Duke Mafia working against each other, and they blew an 18-point lead with, 5 minutes to go? I think so you look at what Michigan State is, the team that scouts better than anybody in the country. Always has. You go to the tournament, it's always that second game. Izzo's going to get you through that weekend. Izzo's mantra's always been, get me the first game, I'll get you the second game. Michigan State hasn't been able to have any good film on these people because there hasn't been any consistent game film. So what they had on Northwestern, that probably was thrown out the window. I think Miller Kopp was averaging 14 or 15 points a game. He's a local kid from Houston. He had a miserable game. But let's talk about the Nance kid. His dad was an NBA all-time great dunker. He's much more healthy. You could tell the way he could run. There aren't many 6'10" guys in the country that can run like him. So I think Northwestern's better. I'm not saying they're great, but they are a better team. They're more mature. And Chris Collins, he has a pretty decent basketball pedigree as a coach.
Interesting how Northwestern is playing the up-tempo, more the counterattack. And they were capable of finishing with the counter break. Was interesting how good they were. And, Nance, he had a double-double at halftime. And he went in the post, did some things, made a three-pointer. I'm not saying they're great, but they were good on that day. And I think you're talking about scouting. Against U of D, the Davis kid went off. And that was an interesting test when Michigan State played Oakland with the dude that scored all the points, the little guard, and they put Henry on him. And Michigan State has tried to put Henry on one of those little guards. And you're right, that's been uncomfortable. They tried that with Davis. They tried that with the little guard from Oakland. Both times, those guys got free for some shots. So on one hand, having some of those bigger athletic perimeter players, whether it be Watts, Henry, Langford, in theory, they can get out on shooters with that length. But against a little yo-yo dribbler or the Taylor Battle type, Boo Booey at 6'2", interesting point you're making about Michigan State not being able to match up with those players. Watts, theoretically, is supposed to be that guy. They liked the way he was coming around on defense last year. he was late getting out on a shooter once when Bowie hit his first three-pointer and kind of went off to the side. And, Michigan State was like running out at those guys and falling for pump fakes out at three-point range, which is not the way they're supposed to do it. If you're going to make a three, hit it over me and I'm right here and I'm not jumping out into the bleachers. Other teams can do it other ways, but that's not the way Michigan State's done it for 26 years. That's not the way Izzo teaches it. When you see people doing it that is not the way Izzo teaches it, you're wondering what's going on here. So you may have read the stuff that we had in SpartanMag.com after the game on Monday morning, and I've not spoken with you about the game since then. I don't know if you read the .comp article that I wrote. It got into what Izzo was talking about wanting to get, he mentioned 2 or 3 times during the post-game press conference about wanting to bring the players' parents in. He said he was confused about what went wrong. Usually he's mad if people are just like deciding not to play defense. He was confused because it wasn't just one guy. It was like everybody, and he felt things were good in practice. He just thought like the dimmer was on for everybody. And he was wondering, how much of it is because of the strange circumstances of the entire season. Just come out of finals week. Everybody knows what's going on with the bubble. So they don't want this malaise to be over the team from now until March. So he didn't say during his radio show last night whether they're bringing their parents in. The governor loosened that up 2 or 3 days ago to allow up to 100 people to attend indoor stadiums for sporting events. So, there were no announcements on that, but I wonder if Izzo is going to bring the parents in. And it's not just happy, feel good. Yeah, he wants to do something for his players and Christmas and everything, but don't get it twisted. He's trying to get things done from a basketball perspective, and something as simple as allowing players to spend some time with their parents can help them stick to scouting reports better. That might sound strange, but little things can create slippage in this sport. And when there's a little bit of slippage on defense in this sport, it becomes YMCA. And you might score 20, I might score 19. Or the game might end up 15-14. Nils, you played a lot of YMCA ball. A lot of those games ended up close, didn't they? There's no scouting reports, right? You just go out and play. Well, when Michigan State played U of D, that was U of D's first game. There was no scouting report. Michigan State had played 4 games. You would think that'd be an advantage to Michigan State, and it was. But for U of D, Michigan State, the one dude that transferred from St. Bonaventure or wherever it was he transferred in from, they didn't know if he's left-handed or right-handed, and he's out there scoring. When there's no scouting reports, that's what happens. Now, Northwestern, Michigan State had enough of a scouting report. The problem that day was nobody followed the scouting report. So if you're not following scouting reports, you don't look like a Tom Izzo coach team. If you have a team that doesn't get into scouting reports on defense, then that coach doesn't remain the coach very long, So and Izzo was confused, didn't look like Michigan State basketball. I want to wait and see if it happens more than once or twice or 3 times, of course. It's early in the season, game number 7. They're still cutting through some things. So I'm not ready to say that it's a systemic problem for them. The on-ball defense at point guard shouldn't be a problem. Rocket Watts should be able to handle that. He's quick enough. He's strong enough. He can do it. They just have to get in there and tighten those.
I want to interrupt you,
screws.
though.
Yeah.
I want to interrupt you for a second. You talked about in the .com, I read it, about this being a finals game, and the finals game was always, Eastern Michigan, Mississippi Valley State. It wasn't going on the road to play a conference opponent, and I think we fail to realize that they were in finals. These guys are mentally drained. It's been the longest semester of their lives, and I think Izzo's correct in thinking, hey, we got to decompress a little bit and, maybe bring the parents in. I think that's a great idea. I talked to my guys down there at Florida International that I'm tight with, my buddies David Cason and Jeremy Ballard, and they said the same thing. I mean, there's this quarantine has affected these kids negatively, and, they don't have anywhere to go. There's nowhere to, get rid of some extra energy. And so I think hopefully they can pull it off to where the parents can come up there, visit their children, because that's not natural. I mean, and, I have a 15-year-old daughter. If I didn't see her for 7 months, it would be a really hard situation. I don't care how many Zoom calls you're on. It's just not natural. The whole thing since March has not been natural, and we're expecting 18, 19, 20-year-old kids to do exactly what they were doing last year at the same time. It just changed. And I think when you change the narrative, we just expect it to be okay. Well, it's not going to be okay. And I think we should allow some slippage and allow, some understanding for these kids and not be hard on Rocket Watts because his defense isn't as good. Maybe there's a situation where he hasn't seen the family or someone's sick that we don't know about. I mean, there's so many things that these kids are dealing with that we don't know firsthand, and I think we need to accept that. And, hopefully Izzo can get that family back and get these kids to see their family, and I think that might change some things.
I think so, too. And Izzo also mentioned that he's been softer than usual this year because of those circumstances. And maybe he has not been as iron-fisted as he usually is on accountability and quality control, which is his strength. Nils, it was the same way last January for different reasons with Cassius Winston, what he went through. Izzo was very careful about things, and that team was slow to come around. And they ended up being pretty good by the end of February. Not sure what they could have done in March. They might have been great. They might have won it all. I'm not sure. But that was a terrible, tragic curveball they had to deal with then. This one, everybody in the country is dealing with it. Did you see Kentucky? What are they, 1-5? Who was the young guy?
Cam Fletcher. They told Cam Fletcher to go home.
Was he the guy that was breaking down crying on the bench during the North Carolina game?
Yeah.
Did you see?
He had the 2 minutes, and he said some offhanded things on social media, and basically Calipari said, "Hey, we can't have that," and agreed with the mom and the kid to maybe take a week or two off. But if Kentucky's 1-5, and we know that maybe they don't have the talent they've had in the past, but Calipari adapts as well as anybody, and you can see he hasn't adapted. Now, I don't think the talent, I don't think they have the guards, and Keon Brooks being out with the calf injury hasn't helped them. But I mean, they're nowhere. I mean, this might be the worst. This is the worst team the worst start since 3 years before Adolph Rupp started coaching back in whenever that was.
1926, and it happens to be a month after Penn State had their worst start in school history. And it's the same year where Michigan had one of its worst games in forever, worst seasons in forever. Michigan football, Penn State football, Kentucky basketball. They're not used to this type of thing. Is it a coincidence that it all happened in the same 2 months? I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, Kentucky's not what they usually are, but the mental strain. Krzyzewski was talking about this a month ago when he lost back-to-back non-conference games for the first time in forever. He was talking about the mental strain and, should we look into shutting these things down? Well, his players were taking it really hard. He had a young team. And Izzo was like, no, our guys need to be playing. Basketball players, if you really want mental illness problems, send them home without basketball. That'd be even a worse problem. Now Michigan State's hitting some of that strain. The thing that Duke had in common with Kentucky is a lot of young players, but also the expectations. When you're at Michigan or Penn State, to their credit, rallied back and won 4 straight. By the end of the year, they were in the top 5 teams of the Big Ten. Kentucky, you're supposed to win there, and they don't understand it if you are not winning. When you're playing it, you know what it's like. You grew up around there, and you've had your ear to the ground with basketball forever. Kentucky, when they bring in those freshmen every year, they're like the Beatles. They are treated like the Beatles there. Everywhere they go, they are just praised. But then, if they lose, it's the opposite. And these kids are on Twitter too much, like Izzo says. So can you imagine those young players away from home 6 straight months, not seeing family members, then they're losing, then they're getting killed on Twitter by Big Blue Nation. Not all of Big Blue Nation, but a lot of them, because they're the Beatles, but then they miss a few notes. So the mental strain at Duke, the mental strain at Kentucky, it's kind of sad what's going on here a little bit, and I don't think they should shut it down by any means. I mean, I don't know everything about the medical circumstances, but it's a different set of challenges, especially for the young players this year. And that's why when Izzo mentioned it 2 or 3 times at the post-game press conference, a little thing like seeing their parents can help spark those things. And all of a sudden, you might have guys from Michigan State trailing harder and trail defense, hedge help recover with, and just being more into the scouting report. There was the one play that Gabe Brown made. He's a junior. Not the youngest guy, of course, but there was a ball screen with Bingham, there's a flat screen, I think, up at the top of the key, and Gabe Brown just jammed into his guy and didn't even hedge. It's like ball screen, the guy just went straight down the lane for a layup. Brown's supposed to hedge and then recover back out to his man, hedge and help Bingham so Bingham can recover and then recover his man. He just stood there, and I'm like, that's weird. I mean, at Michigan State, you're supposed to. They defend, that block elbow nail area. I mean, you defend that like it's a foxhole. And Gabe Brown just let it go by. Now, Gabe Brown had a nice dunk and a couple nice 3-pointers, but that's a guy that usually has a lot of energy and a lot of will, and he's a team guy, but the switch was just off on some of those guys. The dimmer was down.
Well, I think it goes back to those finals. I think it goes back to those finals. Like, We've always talked about I think the finals game was always Oakland. I think for a long time Michigan State would play Oakland and they'd play them down at the Palace.
And I think the loss to Texas, the loss to Texas Southern, I think, was a finals week game also. So you have finals week, and then you have the COVID bubble thing going on. Roll it all into one, and you're on the road against Northwestern, and they played really well. Roll it all together, and Michigan State was a no-show. And Izzo, like he said, he was confused. I would have loved to have gone to practice this week. In the old days, we could go to practice once a week. We would have been at practice today, and you get a chance to see what Izzo's harping on and who he's harping on and how he's handling it. It's always really interesting to watch it and really revealing. And not few coaches in the country allow that kind of access. Bo Ryan at Wisconsin allowed zero access. So it's been incredibly interesting and beneficial as a reporter I've probably been to 300 practices at Michigan State over the last 26 years. And you really get an idea of when he's feeling good about things. That's why a lot of times on the message board, Nils, over the years, when I've come on the message board and said, don't worry, they're about ready to win 4 straight games. Because you can see it in practice beforehand. I don't know what's going on now because we can't go because of COVID, because they keep that arena clean for a good reason. It would have been real interesting to see, did he come down hard on those guys this week? Or was it a combination of both? I don't know, but there are some psychological buttons that Izzo's trying to push. However, this is something, just like last year, it's something that's not on the coach's manual. There's nothing on there that says how to handle a 6-month bubble in a pandemic.
But, you're talking about Wisconsin, though. Wisconsin's the perfect matchup for us. They don't have an ultra-quick point guard. Trice is not an ultra-quick point guard. He's 90 years old. Davidson is who he is. He's the dirtiest kid next to me in college basketball. That's how I play, very dirty.
Good.
And, Reavers is – and then who's the kid that transferred Potter from Ohio State? I think Michigan State matches up well with Wisconsin. We've always – only time Michigan State ever got beat by Wisconsin handily is when they had Kaminsky, Alondo Tucker, and Devin Harris. They don't have one of those 3. Reavers is okay, but I think that Marble I don't know about Kithier, but I think Julius Marble starts against Wisconsin. I think you have to – what he's done, I think he is the guy with – if you're looking at the potential of his team, I think he has the highest ceiling because he can score from 15 feet and in. Marky Bingham, he's not consistent enough. I like what Julius Marble brings. I think his basketball IQ might be on the same level as Kithier. He has more talent athletically than Kithier, so I think you start Marble on Saturday or the next game.
A lot of people were wondering why Kithier was playing so much against Northwestern. And during the live thread over at SpartanMag.com, I mentioned that, Izzo was just trying to find somebody that could play defense on Nance. And Izzo said he thought that Kithier played well and Malik Hall played well and Foster Lawyer played well, and he thought that was about it for his team. So Kithier was the one guy that was into the scouting report. And even if he's not giving you anything on offense, they stuck with him. And this is Izzo. Yeah, you lose to Northwestern, and it's expensive. But this is the Izzo tactic that a lot of people cannot understand each year, and it works every year. He's not just coaching to win that game. He's coaching to win the team. He's coaching the team. He's not coaching that game. He's coaching the team. It's different. Yeah, he's trying to win that game, but you're down by 10 with 2 minutes to go. Yeah, he could have put Gabe Brown in there and Aaron Henry and Watts and told them to just fire up shots. Maybe they'll get lucky. We'll cut it to 3, get a foul. But if you do that, it's like Izzo said after the game. He didn't talk about what I just said specifically, but he says we have an understanding. There's a standard, and you have to play a certain way to be on the court. Like Bob Knight, he'd rather lose and let the lessons sink in than dampen his principles and say, okay, you've not been in the scouting report all night. You've tried to go under screens when we wanted you to trail over them. You've not played ball screens correctly with hedge help recovery. You've not done it right the way we drew it up. You did all those things wrong. You've been out to lunch all night. But that's okay. We're going to put you out for the last 2 minutes. Jack up 3s whenever you get the ball. That might have given you a chance to win the game, but you're going to lose the team. And I don't mean lose the belief of the team. You're losing. Now all of a sudden, those screws you've been trying to tighten, now they're loosener. They're loosener. They're more loose than they were before because you've gone back on your principles. You've watched Izzo for 26 years. A lot of people have. That's how he does it. He'd rather sit those guys and go ahead and finish out the loss and try to come back with some other people than go against his principles and put people back in when they are messing up on defense. That's what he did repeatedly with Brandon Dawson for 3 years. It was a tug-of-war for 4 years. With Nick Ward, it was a tug-of-war for 3 years, and it drove some people crazy. I remember there were people that were like, and I don't mean Michigan State fans. I mean people that are like observers, like in the media. I heard one guy say, when they kept benching Nick Ward, well, Nick Ward is your most productive guy per minute on offense. Isn't the point of the game to score more points than the other team? That's half the game. The other half is playing defense on the other end. And if you want to go to Final Fours, like those banners that Izzo hangs up every couple of years, you got to play team defense. And to play team defense, you have to have accountability and quality control, which sometimes means sitting those guys and those guys ended up doing great things with those players eventually. But if you let them not play defense and score their points, you'll end up looking for another job like Tom Crean. I don't mean to mention him specifically, but various coaches that haven't stuck around. I mean, that is the secret sauce. One of the secret sauces for Tom Izzo and some of these coaches that have the staying power. It's accountability. It's attention to detail and all those things. And you can't let people just get their 30 minutes and their 30 points if they're not going to play defense. Some people don't understand that. Some people don't care to take time to understand that. But that's what it was. And that's what it was the other night. Now, Aaron Henry, they've got to keep that pilot light lit. Sometimes, he gets a little bit foggy. You can't have that. He's your senior or a junior leader, physical, strong guy. He needs to be dialed in all the time. Now, Draymond Green, Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA. When he was at Michigan State, he was not always a great defensive player, partly because so much of the offense went through him that I never asked Izzo about it specifically, but I suspect he let Draymond Green fade on defense here and there because he had to conserve so much energy for offense, because that was a different team with only 7 players. Remember that when they had to get something out of Brandon Wood? Was that his name? The transfer from Valparaiso?
Valpo.
And
from Kokomo, Indiana.
Like Austin Thornton had to come in and be a big major role player that year. I mean, that team ended up being a number 1 seed going to the Sweet 16, losing to Louisville. Good team. But Izzo kind of had to relax some of his principles because he needed so much out of Draymond that he couldn't ask him to be Antonio Smith on defense. So that was one time that Draymond, I mean, he knew the scouting report and he directed traffic, but he wasn't slapping the court down and ready 35 minutes a game because it couldn't be done. So that was one year where it was different and it turned out well. Of course, we know what happened with the travel kind of pinched him in that year. But that's the way I saw what happened in the late stages of that game and what went on that game. That he didn't want to put them back in the game because he didn't want to go against his principles. Now, Izzo thought there were certain reasons why things were flickering in that game, and we just talked about those. But so now what happens in the next game, the game coming out of that? How much do you learn? Do they see their family? Will they be a little bit more bright-eyed and bushy-tailed coming out of that? If so, then the adherence to the quality control has to be up to 11 against Wisconsin. Now, you asked about Kithier, and we were talking about Kithier a little bit. Last year when Michigan State played Wisconsin, they split with them. In January, Michigan State won 67-55. That was the night Cassius Winston set the assists record. That was before Wisconsin really started going. Bingham played 16 minutes in that game. Marble played 8 minutes. Kithier played 7. Last year, now Kithier was not starting last year. Last year in the second game, Wisconsin won 64-63. Kithier played 9, Bingham played 11, and Malik Hall started that game and played 20 minutes. It was one of those games, I think, after a loss where Izzo was kind of shuffling the deck a little bit. But your point is not lost about Marble possibly playing more minutes in this game. He played like 4 or 5 against Wisconsin in the second game. So could he be a good matchup? Cover some ground, be physical with those guys, because Potter and Reavers, they don't look real strong, but Potter's bigger this year. You're going to have to bump and bang with those guys and get out.
Oh, no, he's a pain. He's a pain. He's an old school like Steamza or Brian Butch or just a pain to deal with. Just strong in the shoulders, absorbs contact. But here's the thing though, let's talk about the advantage. There's a huge advantage. Wisconsin just played today, right? Michigan State's playing at home, 11:30. Wisconsin's having to get, they're going to probably travel on Christmas Eve. I mean, that's a tough deal.
Good point.
So that's about an 8 to 10 point benefit, in my opinion. 2 days more. Michigan State's had to think about how bad they played on Sunday. It's a Tuesday night. Wisconsin's just getting out of there. I don't know what their situation is tomorrow. They might travel early. I don't know. Maybe, try to see their families or whatever. Probably not. But, they'll probably be in East Lansing at the Kellogg Center where they're going to stay on the 24th. I mean, I think that's a tough deal for somebody playing on Christmas. And I think I couldn't be more fired up than Michigan State basketball's at 11:30. We talked thousands of times, me and you, about Christmas got ruined when they took away the bowl games on Christmas Day, and they took away the greatest all-star game ever that Lindsey Nelson, when we were growing up, used to call on CBS the blue-gray game. It was the best. There was nothing better than the blue-gray at 10 o'clock on Christmas Day, watching that. I mean, I still miss that to this day.
I like the blue-gray game, and unfortunately, there were sometimes some Spartans playing in that game. Well, also, the Sun Bowl used to be on Christmas. I mean, to me, growing up, you're the same way.
So that was on New Year's Eve. Sun Bowl was always on New Year's Eve.
Sun Bowl was on Christmas Day for years.
No, it wasn't. When?
For years, for about 50 years.
When?
And way back a long time ago, the Fiesta Bowl used to be on Christmas also. The Sun Bowl.
That was before color TV.
Fiesta Bowl was Christmas Day up until about like 1976. Oklahoma played Wyoming in like the 1976.
You're talking about Fred Akers. You're talking about Fred Akers. About Fred Akers before he went to Texas as head coach.
Yeah. No. Akers may have been in Texas by then. Around that time. Okay. Now, Sun Bowl. Look it up. Sun Bowl used to be on Christmas. But, and they weren't the best football games ever, but Christmas was a football holiday. It's become an NBA holiday. This year, Big Ten basketball getting involved in it. I think that was a good move. At that time when the Big Ten did that, they weren't sure if the NBA would be back at that point, so they were going to try to take over that day, which is a good move for branding. NBA is pretty popular, but there'll be some people that would like to see a different flavor of things. I've always believed that the NHL should play on Christmas Day. It's part of their collective bargaining agreement that the NHL does not play at all on Christmas. I think they should play one game a year, 2 games a year on Christmas, and just tell their players, hey, if you have to play on it, it's a privilege. Like in the NFL, if you have to play on Thanksgiving, it's considered a privilege. NHL's missing a marketing play there because there's some people that get NBA fatigue on Christmas. But we're not here to talk about what's best for the NHL. I want to talk about what's best for Nils Deco. Nils, football. What do you make of the transfer portal? Michigan State getting that offensive tackle from Arkansas State, the running back Joyner from Auburn, and Russo, the quarterback from Temple. We've talked a little bit about it. What are your latest thoughts about it?
Well, I think the fact that Florida State, Texas, I mean, everybody was going after this Jarrett Horse kid from Middleton, Wisconsin. I mean, I watched the film that Justin put on the website, and it was amazing how physical he was. And I think Rod Gilmore was talking about how he was the best player on the field at that time. I mean, this guy is a physical Wisconsin type of kid that, let me ask you something. Who was the number 1 rated Wisconsin offensive lineman that went to Michigan State? He was a Prop 48 from Cudahy, Wisconsin. See if you remember his name.
What year?
Oh, it would have been late 80s, early 90s.
Not Kevin Robbins? Was he from there?
No, Kevin Robbins was from Washington, D.C. He was transferred from Wichita State.
I don't know. Who is it?
Bob Henry. Remember Bob Henry as a name? There was an offensive lineman from Cudahy, Wisconsin that was a Prop 48 and was a big-time 4-star recruit. He was like number 70. I can't remember, but he was a big-time recruit out of Wisconsin. Big bone kid. Before Barry Alvarez got there and realized that Wisconsin has the best offensive lineman in the world, not in the States, in the world. I mean, if you think about it, since Barry Alvarez got there in whatever year that was, they put more people in the NFL than anybody per capita. I mean, Wisconsin did an amazing job. You go to Wisconsin to get offensive linemen. Travis Frederick, Joe Thomas, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, it's just amazing. Joe Panos. I mean, they're on the level of Ohio State, if not better.
Yeah.
Bob Henry, I think, was the guy's name.
Bob Henry. Yeah, I didn't realize there was a Prop 48. But I give Michigan State credit for going and get that offensive tackle, and it gives a different look to the offensive line for next year.
it changes the whole thing because Jarvis can move inside because Jarvis is not a right tackle. He's a right guard, and he's probably a plus player at right guard. He struggled because he's not long enough to play right tackle. So, it changes the whole narrative. And if Anobo or whatever they say, number 71, I think he's a kid if they can develop him because I think he has the athletic ability and the frame to kind of change the whole mantra up front. I just don't think Michigan State is as athletic as they need to be on the offensive line. I don't think they've been that way for probably 6 or 7 years. And I don't know what that goes to, evaluation or what they're looking for. I mean, the offensive line has not been great since that team with Jack Conklin, Jack Allen, Donovan Clark, and then Brian Allen. I mean, those 4 guys all played in the NFL. Who's the right tackle on that team?
I don't know. I can't think right now.
Okay, but the two that was the last time Michigan State had a good offensive line, and so
was Finoti still
another
around
year
then?
with the maturity? No, that was Finoti was before that, or maybe it was. I don't know, but there was a right tackle that I can't remember who it was. But I think it's a plus thing, and I think the Russo kid, like we mentioned the last thing, I talked to my buddy who coached him or knew of him at Temple. He said he's got a big time arm, and so if Thorne can beat him out, that's a plus.
Yes.
But it'd be nice to have a 5th-year or 6th-year senior as your quarterback with these receivers coming back, with a veteran offensive line, because this offense this year might have been the worst Michigan State's ever had. I mean, going back to 1983 when Clark Brown was the quarterback, I can't remember, a worse offensive offense since then.
I hear you, man. I hear you. I think Donovan Clark played right tackle at that time. They moved him over to left tackle later. I think, Cody Keeler was around. He was a junior, right?
Okay.
In 2015.
That's right.
Anyway, with the Wisconsin basketball game coming up, you think Michigan State's got them where they want them. It would be a lot better if the crowd were there, of course. I have to wait and I have to see it to believe it. I think Michigan State will be more spruced up, but still Wisconsin, with the way they can shoot the three-pointer at all 5 positions, it's strange. It's a little bit Frankenstein basketball, but it works. And man, they looked good against Louisville. Now I know Louisville had missed a lot of time because of COVID. They hadn't practiced much. But when you shoot 64% from 3-point range, and of course,
but that goes back exactly in terms of film and not being able to be tied in, because Chris Mack is a big time coach, and it goes back to that. I mean, I don't know. Did you watch the whole game? I didn't get to see any of it. I'd like to know how many true open jump shots, Wisconsin was shooting, because to shoot that kind of percentage, there had to be some kind of a thing amiss with Louisville. And if they're having COVID issues, and you've got a coach like Chris Mack, who's a high-level coach, they probably weren't in the scouting report like Michigan State wasn't last Sunday.
Right. All right, man. Anything else, Nils? So that's what we do
No,
different.
all good. Merry Christmas.
That's what we do different on this show. If you call in, we're not just going to take your call and move on. We'll call in. We'll have a conversation. We'll hit on a couple of things. So if you want to call and get involved, we will certainly take a look at it. And we had a couple of calls earlier from Pontiac, and I did not answer it because Nils was on the line. It was a number I didn't recognize. If it's a number I don't recognize, I might be a little slower on the draw. But you're expecting Michigan State to beat Wisconsin Christmas Day.
Yeah, I'm feeling that I'm going to have a nice Christmas gift, and that's all I need.
That game's at noon? I haven't even looked at it.
12:30 it says, 11:30 Central Standard Time.
All right, now
I like that too. I think that plays into Michigan State's advantage.
What do you think about the fact that every single player for Wisconsin's a senior, and 3 of them are redshirt seniors?
That's fine, but none of them are NBA players, though. I mean, when it's all said and done, talent wins. And Davidson's the same player he was 3 years ago. Dimitri Trice is the same player.
Trice is shooting a little bit. Trice is shooting a little bit better. Will Michigan State be able to keep Trice out of the lane? That's not completely his game. What's that?
I'm telling you, that's why Michigan State doesn't have a hard time all the time. Now, they don't get blown out by Wisconsin. And I think it's going to be, it's always going to be a tough, well-fought game, but I like Michigan State in this game because I think, remember, we're not even mentioning the guy that's struggling tonight with a little bad knee, but the kid's from Wisconsin, okay? You don't think you're going to get the best Joey Hauser, the best version of Joey Hauser on Saturday? Or on Friday, whatever day it is?
Imagine he'll be playing pretty well. He'll be spruced up.
He was. Exactly.
Was it Dan France? The
Watch
Detroit
Joey
Spartans.
Hauser.
Was Dan France the starter at right tackle in 2015? No? I
No,
don't know.
he was in the Rose Bowl. He was on the Rose Bowl team.
All right. All right, man.
I think it was Cody Keeler. I think you're right.
Keeler. Okay, Nils, I really appreciate
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy holidays,
Christmas.
brother.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. There he goes, Nils Deco. Good friend of the program, friend of SpartanMag.com. You know, I started the show. I didn't even say who I was. It says on the screen, I'm Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. If you've never been exposed to this craziness before, we've got a website called SpartanMag.com, part of the Rivals.com network. We cover Michigan State football, basketball, recruiting. It's a premium website. Costs a couple dollars a month to be on it because we're full-time professional journalists. And we aim to be a credible professional news organization. Thank you to Paul Konendijk, all the work he's done over the years. Corey Robinson, recruiting anchor, doing a great job. Justin Thind is intern extraordinaire. Ricardo Cooney, and a cast of thousands over at the Underground Bunker message board, Michigan State fans. It is the finest community of Michigan State fans. They go on there and make observations, conversations, analyses, and we try to keep people separated and civil. Sometimes we fail at that for a few hours. Had a little dust up this week. My inbox was pretty full. Comparoni, what's wrong with your stupid website? It's going downhill. I didn't know, man. I was out Christmas shopping. I missed it. I step away from the board a little bit. Got a little haywire. My guys, Andy and Ohio Spartan, and others with the help they do policing things, playing recess attendant. We need those people. They do a great job. And everybody takes the people that are there at SpartanMag.com, they take the website seriously, which I really think is great. To them, they take ownership of the site. It's a Michigan State site. To them, it means something, and they want it to be good, and they take care of it, and they do a good job. If you're not familiar with SpartanMag.com, go over there, SpartanMag.com. You can try it out for free for a month, 30 days. You get a password, get in there. You'll see what all the fuss is about. All right, I'm going to go over here to the chat area, take some questions over here. Angelo Gross, enthusiast, and Harold Joyner, enthusiast. He's here. Rob South is here. Old Tuck, we heard from him earlier. He's here. John G, gentleman John G, he's in. And Card Shark Chris. Card Shark Chris, the Sharks are checking in from Forsyth County, Georgia, with a hang loose sign for Card Shark Chris. So we got a new starting five this week. Angelo Gross, Harold Joyner, enthusiast. Rob South, Old Tuck in the middle. And in the backcourt this weekend, starting John G and Card Shark Chris. How about it? Got some new blood, new recruits there in starting five. Good to hear from those guys. JJ Huddle 79, first man off the bench, saying, "What up, fam? Go green." Happy holidays to you, JJ Huddle 79. Card Shark Chris says, "Will there be any anticipated staff changes this offseason?" We talked about that a little bit when Kelly Spartan called in. He asked me to put on my speculation glasses. We talked about Mike Tressel earlier. He's going to be a coveted coach, I would think. A marketable coach. I would imagine he could be a coordinator at a big-time job next year, I'm guessing. So I think just by natural attrition, that could happen. He speculated a little bit about the special team situation. I don't know. I've not heard anything about that. I guess it wouldn't shock me, but I don't know. Big Will says, how many transfers do you expect Tucker to take? So Michigan State's got 3 already. I'm thinking they're going to be looking for a linebacker. We know that they're on Nate Ote. No news from him. Hear the Hurricanes are in there a little bit. I've not heard anything recently with him. I'm thinking a linebacker. I'm thinking a tight end. So they've got 3. That'd be 5. Maybe 1 or 2 more. 7 is a lot. Rutgers brought in 7 last year. That was a lot. So I'm expecting a couple more. We heard a little bit ahead of time, that Russo was under consideration, and we knew about Joyner a little bit ahead of time, but with Horst, that one took a lot of us by surprise, and makes perfect sense, and I like Horst a lot. I said this last week when a lot of people were talking about the transfer portal. And people get excited about bringing in a Harold Joyner out of Auburn for good reasons. But a lot of people see someone in the transfer portal from a power program, and they're like, hey, man, let's get somebody from that school. You know, like when Michigan State brought in Gus Ornstein from Notre Dame or Luke Bency from Florida. Was Brad Johnson coming in from UCLA? Those guys were all quarterbacks. But, you know, sometimes those guys work out. Sometimes they don't. Nothing against those gentlemen. But when you see guys coming in from other programs, like when Madre London left Michigan State to go to Tennessee, didn't do very much at Tennessee. Sometimes you are what you are. In the portal, I'm more intrigued about a guy that's been at a lower division and has been all conference that wants a shot to move up in weight class, go to a Power 5 conference, and compete at that level. Horst went from, was he at junior college? Was it Independence Community College? Went to Arkansas State, third team All Sun Belt last year, first team All Sun Belt this year. That's what I'm talking about. Frame checks out. Midwestern guy originally from Wisconsin. You heard what Nils said about Wisconsin guys a minute ago. They're well-fed, corn-feds up there. Good combination of the corn-fed offensive linemen with sufficient intake of dairy products. Got some good bone density going on there. So you've got Sun Belt, which right now has become the best mid-major conference in college football. Maybe even better than the Mountain West. You saw what Coastal Carolina's done, Appalachian State. Troy State's been pretty good in recent years. I was listening to McElroy. Greg McElroy does a great job on Sirius Satellite Radio. He was talking about, he's the former quarterback at Alabama. He was saying he didn't name the coach by name, but he said he was speaking with an assistant coach at a Power 5 school, and that Power 5 assistant coach told him like 3 weeks ago that he and his staff at his school were really going to start combing over the commitment lists of the Sun Belt Conference teams. Not only their commitments, but also their players for draft portal type of guys. Because as he said, as McElroy said, paraphrasing him, the Sun Belt teams, they've got athletes, they've got guys that love football, and guys that are really hungry to prove themselves. And you see that the level of football has been pretty good in the Sun Belt this year. And blam, Michigan State goes out and gets a good offensive tackle, maybe the best offensive tackle in the Sun Belt. I've not looked at those videos that Justin put out over at SpartanMag.com, Underground Bunker, the video highlights that Nils was talking about a moment ago. I've not had a chance to go back and look at Arkansas State games yet, but I intend to. Maybe we'll have some cut-ups of him next week. This week we had some cut-ups from Russo in the first half against Memphis. Maybe next week we'll have second half highlights of Russo of Temple against Memphis. And I think we'll get some comments here about what you guys thought of the Russo highlights that we posted earlier. If you're just joining us, my name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Go to SpartanMag.com, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber. You come back here, I'll give you an attaboy. Attaboy. Meantime, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. And don't forget to tip your bartenders and your waitresses. All right, so Seth Foreman says AG is the preferred walk-on. He's here. Seth Foreman says, good evening, Spartan gentlemen. AG says, I'm sure you've covered it, but does the current staff have a dedicated recruiting coordinator? I remember Coach Mel Tucker went after Vince Marrow pretty hard. Curious if he'll do something similar this offseason. Vince Marrow, elephant hunter type recruiter at the University of Kentucky. That could happen. They could go after him again or others, but Marrow got a real good contract deal out of that. That could be revisited at some point. But in terms of a dedicated recruiting coordinator, you know, when Curtis Blackwell was here under Mark D'Antonio, that wasn't really his title. He was the director of, you know, player personnel engagement and development or something like that. And then he left, and then they put Mark Staten in as recruiting coordinator. I think he'd been recruiting coordinator earlier, and Staten was not real. You know, he told D'Antonio, you know, he wasn't sure he could do that and offensive line coach. That was tough. So he did it for a year. I'm not sure how well oiled that whole situation was, but there's not really a recruiting coordinator. It's my understanding. This might be the first time you've heard this, but I don't know if it's totally like this. But the plan was to set it up for each assistant coach to have his own recruiting aide, his own recruiting coordinator that would keep him abreast of his recruits and what's going on. What have they tweeted? Who are the new offers? What's the new film on these guys? Who else is getting in line? And then what other players have done what in their position group? Each assistant coach would have his own guy. That's big time. That's big time coordination, big time organization, quality control, all those things. So, and then they've got the on-campus recruiting help from Lisa Kaim. I've never met her before because of the COVID situation. What's her name? Kaim. Lisa Ben Kaim, I think is her name. And a couple others. Scott Aligo's in there. Jeff, is it Martin or Carton? I should know. I've not met these people face to face. But they've got it going in waves. So there's not one recruiting coordinator that's doing it. It's been divvied out, and it's intense. So that's the answer to that. That's the name of that tune. Gordon Tonona says the 2021 schedule has Michigan State playing at Michigan again. The schedule came out. I'm not aware of this. Was that supposed to happen? So they played at Michigan in 2019 and 2020, correct? And I thought that was to even things out. I don't know what's going on there. Don Strait, thanks a lot, Don Strait, for the super chat. Personal sponsorship, really appreciate that. Tom Coyle says, finally heard old Tuck. Spartan Dude 313 says, let's do this, comp. Troy Thibodeau says, what about this quarterback from Temple? He's a fifth-year senior. That was before I showed the highlights. I showed every pass that he threw in the first half of that game against Memphis. It was back on October 21st. And we'll look at some more next week. Tell me what you think. It looks to me, I don't know. He's I'll get to another question. Somebody at the underground bunker wanted to know, who you compare him to. And you just saw him. Once you see him, there's no reason to compare him to anybody. You saw him with your own eyes. But somebody wanted to know if I would compare him to, like, Peyton Ramsey. Ramsey's a little shorter at 6'2". Actually, it was Gator from Farmington Hills asked that question. And he says, could you see, Michigan State more or less in 2021 could they get a bump from Russo the way Northwestern got a bump from Ramsey? Ramsey was interesting because Ramsey can run a little bit, but not a ton. This kid, Russo's a little more physical. But the numbers are similar in that Ramsey had really big completion percentage numbers. I think he left Indiana the all-time leader in completion percentage. Russo was throwing like 70% when he got hurt this year against Temple, or for Temple. Ramsey had interception problems early in his career. As a sophomore, I think he threw 13. But his last year at Indiana had cut down on his turnovers. And this year at Northwestern, not as many. So if Russo had played a full season this year at Temple, might he have avoided interceptions in his final year at Temple the way Ramsey did at Indiana? It's possible. We didn't see a full season out of him. He did throw 6 interceptions. 3 against Memphis. Like I said, 2 were the fault of receivers. On one, a receiver slipped and fell. On the other one, he threw it slightly behind him, but it was a tip drill interception. Both the fault of receivers. So of those six interceptions, I've not seen the other 3, but only one was on him. You still don't want to have that many, but he's got to cut down on that. There's no question. Big Will says, do you know when Palier? See, I trained myself how to say it, now I'm losing it. Nateote, when he's going to make a decision. No, I don't know. And it's got to be soon. Well, somewhat soon. You have to get your moving. You got to move and move in time for January 10th. So it's not 12th hour, but it's got to be soon. But no, I've not heard. It's got to be soon, though. He wants to go somewhere for spring semester beginning in January. That's not something that's going to take on, go all the way to February or March. It's going to be now. Tom Coyle says, now you have to be careful and be a complete sellout. I don't know what that means. Jim Curtis, thanks to Jim Curtis. Appreciate the personal sponsorship from you, SpartanMag.com. We appreciate that. Curtis says, no specific questions, just showing my support for the best MSU source anywhere. Thanks a lot, Jim. That means a lot. Really appreciate that. It really does. Thanks. I don't know if you can hear this horn or not, but got the air horn going. Don't have the bell today. MSU number one fan says, I hope Rocky does better next season. Will Rocky start next season? I think you're being facetious. Rocky Lombardi has entered the transfer portal, and we wish him the best. Just because someone enters the portal, last year Connor Hayward left, went into the portal, and then came back. Now, he went into the portal when D'Antonio was coach, and then coaching change, he has to come back, asked to come back. If Lombardi wanted to come back and play tight end, is there room for him? I don't know. I don't know that there's not. I don't know which type of programs are going to be interested in him. Wish him the best. I don't know. It's hard to get some inside information these days because you're not rubbing elbows with coaches, because you can't rub elbows with anybody. Hopefully that'll be coming to an end soon. I think it will be. I think 2021 is going to be a great year, people. Great year. It's going to be a great year. It's going to be good. And man, when we're able to go back to sporting events and go back to clubs and bars and watch bands and see people, when we get back to that, we're all just going to love it so much more. It's going to be something that we won't take for granted anymore. And we're just going to be enthusiastic. We're going to embrace those things. I think that's the way it's going to be. I hope it. Or it could be everybody's still going to not want to touch anybody. When this thing first hit last spring, people were saying this could be the end of the handshake. I wonder. I don't know. But when we get back out and mix again, it's going to be awesome. 2021 could be a great year. I think it's going to be great. Al Montgomery says, go white. MSU number one fan says, when will we see next season's schedule? I don't know. Somebody said earlier about next year's 2021 game. I don't know. Not sure. Good question. Michigan State still scheduled to go play at Miami next year. I don't know. Miami did not have to come here, so contractually Michigan State might not have to go there. But will Michigan State go ahead and play it in order to get some, just to get a little bit of a presence in Florida? Could it help recruiting a little bit if you go down there and win? I don't know. If you just go and play Miami, do they pay you $1 million and then it's not a one-for-one trade and you just come out of it with money? Could Michigan State do that? It's possible. Would you rather have money or a game at home against UAB and get a win? Michigan State gets $1 million. That helps. Doesn't help you. Doesn't help me. You don't get any of the money. Rather see him play Miami, Florida? In order to be the man, you got to beat the man. You got to play some good teams, right? We don't know if De'Aaron King's coming back. What's Miami going to look like? Looked pretty good this year. I don't know. Does Bill Beekman consult Mel Tucker about what he wants to do on something like that? Good questions. I don't know the answer. Sparty for Life says, aloha. Mr. Bowman says, where's my Texas A&M guy at? I don't know who your Texas A&M guy is. I was watching A&M a little bit last night, that game against Tennessee, because I didn't see it when it was live on Saturday. I didn't really focus on it. I had it on one screen while I was watching Russo tape on the other, and A&M did not look good in the first 10 minutes. Tennessee went down there and scored, and A&M was a little bit frazzled. Kellen Mond is okay at quarterback, a little bit erratic. What quarterback is not erratic these days? The tailback is good. But I'm watching A&M, and number 5 in the country, and they're complaining that they're not in the playoff. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, they don't look that great. And I wish Iowa, as good as Iowa's playing, I wish Iowa could play a more noteworthy Big Ten team. I'm sorry, a more noteworthy SEC team. They're playing Missouri. Missouri, people in the SEC don't even consider Missouri SEC, right? And Missouri was blown out in their last 2 games by Georgia and somebody else. Now Iowa's going to put a hole in them. Iowa's going to beat Missouri, and they won't get much credit for it. I would have liked to have seen Iowa play Georgia or A&M, something like that, because nobody would have expected Iowa to play and to win, and that's when they kind of can go Buster Douglas on you a little bit. The way Iowa's playing, they're very enthusiastic and physical. They limit mistakes. I just think that I would have really liked to have seen Iowa play one of those SEC teams this year in the bowl games. And, when the bowl games are played this year, who's A&M playing? A&M's playing Oklahoma and Florida's playing somebody. If they lose those games, who's Florida playing? Florida's playing Oklahoma in the Cotton Bowl, right? So who's Texas A&M playing? Are they playing Oregon, maybe? Oh, for crying out loud. Playing the Orange Bowl. Dead Air. Whoever the hell they're playing. Who are they playing? Whoever A&M's playing. Like, if Florida loses to Oklahoma, I don't want to hear this crap about, well, Florida didn't win because they didn't care, because they didn't make the playoff, and, it didn't matter. Just like when Auburn lost to Minnesota last year. Well, it didn't really matter much to Auburn. Or when Auburn lost to Central Florida in the Peach Bowl. It didn't really matter because it was just the bowl game and it wasn't the SEC. Or when Alabama lost to Utah in the Sugar Bowl. It didn't matter because Alabama was out of the national championship hunt. Or when Alabama lost to Oklahoma in the Sugar Bowl. It didn't really matter because Alabama didn't care anymore because they were out of the bowl game. I don't want to hear that. If Florida loses, if A&M loses, I don't want to hear, it didn't matter because they weren't in the other bowl, they weren't in the playoff, so it doesn't matter down here. It doesn't matter down there. I thought it just means more. What happens to it just means more? What happens to that crap when Auburn loses to Minnesota and Auburn loses to Central Florida? And Saban loses to Utah in a bowl game. And Saban loses to Oklahoma in a bowl. I know Saban's great and everything. But if you lose bowl games, own it. Don't sit there and say, well, it doesn't. It means more here, but the bowl games don't mean more when we lose. When they do, when we win our bowl games, we all chant SEC, SEC, and talk about it just means more. Dude, can't have it both ways. Just saying. Let's go back to the chat area. Spartan Dude 313 says, Russo is not the guy. MSU number one fan says, I'm glad we beat Michigan. Matt McLeod says, from these highlights, Russo's receivers were not the best receivers. Russo would have had better numbers if his receivers had better hands. I kind of thought the same thing when I was watching it. Also his left tackle on one of those sacks kind of hung him out to dry a little bit. Mr. Bowman says, can we stop playing the same plays? I don't know what that means. Spartan Dude 313 says, what is success for Russo? Big Ten appearance. Success for Russo would be in my opinion, be the starting quarterback and quarterbacking the team to a bowl game, bowl win type of thing. Detroit Spartan says, number one looks pretty good. That's the wide receiver, Mack, for Memphis. He's 6'5". Pretty solid. Not the most fluid guy, but he was good. Big Will says, I would like Tucker to make some staff changes. Due to the timing of his hiring, he definitely was not able to hire who he wanted to. Interesting. Spartan Dude 313 says, trust me, we will be praying for the backup to come in. Detroit Spartan says, Russo gets hot, completes a lot of passes, then out of nowhere throws a real questionable ball. I would agree with that. Spartan Dude 313 says, question, is Russo an NFL quarterback? Detroit Spartan says, we need to see him in the spring, bottom line. Spartan Dude 313 says, to me, it's Thorne's job to lose. Interesting take. I liked Thorne. I thought Thorne showed a lot of good things. Set a Michigan State freshman record in that game, obviously, against Penn State. Each time he played, he was a little bit better than I expected. Let's go back to the SpartanMag.com mailbag a little bit. Hayes says, this is the big question of the day apparently this week. Hayes says, is Russo capable of being a fourth-round draft grade? I'll defer a little bit to Nils' friend who coached at Temple, and he thought that he was a late-round NFL guy. When I look at him, I didn't think Jake Rudock was an NFL draft pick. Fourth round, that's pretty high. Jake Fromm was fourth or fifth round. He's not Jake Fromm, right? Kid from Georgia. So, but again, there are seventh-round quarterbacks that surprise me every year. So, if he starts and plays every game, Rudock transferred from Iowa to Michigan, did not set the world on fire, and the Lions drafted him. So, I wouldn't shut the door on it. He could do that, or he could lose the job. Do not know. All right. WX Spartan from the banks of the Saginaw River says, Jim, it may be just me as a casual watcher, but it seems like Eli Collins was hit in the backfield far more than the other backs. Has he been super unlucky on blocking? Has it been that he is more naturally patient as a runner than Simmons or Hayward and takes too much time? Or does it seem he's just a step slow this year? That's a great question. I've wondered the same thing. Every time I see him, he's getting hit in the backfield. Did not get a lot of carries. I think some of it was bad luck. I think some of it was that he was dancing a little too much. So it's a combination of those things. Would have loved to have seen a broader body of work and work sample for us to go over. If we find out that he's back, I might go back and look at some of those games and chart that exact thing to try to get a clue what was going on with Eli Collins, because I thought the running back situation was good and healthy for the next 3 years with him. I thought a combination of Eli Collins and Jordan Simmons could be a pretty good 1-2 punch, but you saw what happened with Eli Collins. It was a big surprise and a disappointment for him, and I'm sure that for a lot of people. But don't count him out. We'll see what happens next. I don't know. Mile High from Golden, Colorado says, hi, Jim. Thanks for all you do. Hope you and your family have a happy, healthy holiday season. From Mile High in Golden, Colorado. Thanks to you out in Golden, Colorado. Thanks for being a contributor to SpartanMag.com and a Spartan Magger. If you're a Magger, that means you're a SpartanMag.com subscriber. We affectionately refer to SpartanMag.com subscribers as Maggers. Maggers. They're members. They're not just subscribers. They're members. It's a club. It's the preeminent online community for Michigan State sports. We have a lot of fun there. He says, any insight into how many more transfers Michigan State expects in and out? Are there any names and positions on the radar coming in or moving out? I've heard there's 2 more going out, one on offense and one on defense. That's what I've heard. Not heard it. Not sure who they are yet. The person who told me that didn't give me any names. This just handed to me. It's injury information. Looks like this is from the North Pole. Comet having some hamstring problems. He's probable. Donner, thigh contusion for Donner right now is probable. And Blitzen with an ankle problem. Blitzen is questionable for Thursday night. So concerned about that. It's the annual injury report from the North Pole. All right, Brian from Lansing says, have you heard anything about your contact with Jaron Mangum possibly transferring out of Colorado? No, I've not heard anything about that. That's serious family stuff. I don't want to speculate on that either. Thanks for the question, though. Comp says, first and foremost, happy holidays to you, Justin Corey, and Paul and the rest of the SpartanMag.com crew. Thanks to you, CJ from South Philadelphia. He says, 850 players in the portal as of December 21st with the second National Signing Day coming up in February. What is the insanity? What is this insanity? And have we ever seen anything like this? What will the long-term impact of this be? The only player movement that I can remember this wild, the only player movements I can remember, he says, that were this wild were when SMU, after they got the death penalty and Penn State post sanctions, but never on this scale. I agree, 850 in the portal. It's crazy. A lot of players. When the portal first began, a lot of old people like me are like, oh, that's bad because it's just going to make people quit. Players are going to quit and chase greener pastures thinking there's something better out there. They're not going to learn how to persevere, and they're going to end up not getting scholarships. They're going to be left out in the cold. That's true. There's some of that. But there's also a lot of coaches that are pushing players out, which is the way it is these days. Ethically wouldn't have flown 10 years ago, but that's the way it is. 850 in the portal. Some of those guys are non-scholarship guys. A lot of times walk-ons putting their name out there to see what kind of interest they can be, what kind of interest they can get. Sometimes they don't get any and they come back. That's what happened with Behringer, the punter. He was a walk-on, went into the portal, didn't get any interest, came back. Well, the tough thing is right now is that you don't have as many seniors leaving because seniors have the option of coming back. So you have that. So there's less attrition. And with people recruiting to the portal, you're going to see programs. You're asking what the benefit is or what the implications are, or You're asking what the long-term impact is going to be? Chris Chynum, thank you very much. With bell, I don't have my bell, but thank you, Chris Chynum, for personal sponsorship. Appreciate that. For SpartanMag.com. Appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Way to be. Long-term impact. Long-term unintended consequences. Well, that's what you're asking about. Teams, as they put their teams together, rosters together, they are going to hold scholarships for transfer portal people, or they're going to move people out to move people in. So you're going to see people, every program is going to be kicking people out every year. And that's not good. I know Michigan State's doing it, other programs are doing it, but from an ethical standpoint, those coaches have to do it because they're getting paid to win. They're getting paid to try to keep their jobs. I understand why they're doing it. I'm just saying it's unfortunate. I don't like it. I'm not saying the coaches specifically, individually, are wrong or bad people to do it. That's their business nowadays. I just hate it for the young men who want to stay at a program and signed, and we're all gung-ho about a university and bought all the stuff, and their parents bought their stuff, and they have to go home and tell mom I wasn't good enough. They got rid of me, so I'm in the portal now, and I don't know who's going to take me. And it's going to happen every year around Christmas. There's enough bad crap going on in college football, and I don't know. That doesn't seem so great to me. So that's one thing. Secondly, with teams holding scholarship slots for anticipating going into the portal, what that means is they're going to sign fewer freshmen. So Michigan State was anticipating going after a quarterback, they got Russo. Anticipated going after a tackle, they got Horst. Anticipating going after a running back, they got Joyner. And that's great, but that's 3 people that they didn't sign in the recruiting class. They've got a 19-man class. If there were no portal, maybe they've got room to sign 22. Or maybe they wouldn't because they wouldn't be able to kick people to the portal. The way Saban used to do it, he just kicked people off and there was no portal. So basically what I'm saying is I think there's going to be fewer opportunities nationwide for freshman incoming recruits. I think it'll be shaved down a little, like 2 or 3 players, fewer per team. If there's 100 teams, you're looking at 200 fewer players, 300 fewer players nationwide that sign, maybe 400 fewer per year. That's my guess. All right, got a question here from Nate Teote. Talked about him already. All right, Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina, says, Jim, not sure if any other Spartans like myself find themselves as conflicted as I do. Should we continue to revel in the demise of what appears to be a train wreck happening down in Ann Arbor, or hope that Harbaugh's days are numbered? Or do we secretly wish Harbaugh to stay at Michigan, knowing that the program will continue to flounder and never reach Indianapolis? Wondering if you can help with my dilemma. Well, I can't tell you how to think, but I understand some of the people that are salivating at the idea that he's just going to rot on the vine there. Michigan, whatever. We talk about Michigan a lot because Michigan State recruits against Michigan. They're recruiting against him right now for Rayshon Benny. If he stays, there's always a chance he can get it turned around. I don't think he will. I think he's lost that team for some of the reasons we talked about in college football these days. When you have a meritocracy going in, you're treating people like numbers and cattle, and you're getting rid of players, and they get the idea that you don't really care about them. Then when you start losing a couple of games and you try to rally the troops in the locker room or on the sideline, they're going to tune you out because you don't care about them. You've already gotten rid of some of their friends, and it's hard to rally guys in those situations. So can they rally? I doubt it. Might we see him there again next year and more of the same? I suspect so. The president there, would he like to see Harbaugh rot on the vine in spite of the university? I don't know. Is he a big football guy? I don't know. He and Harbaugh and the president have kind of jabbed at each other publicly and behind closed doors. Not behind closed doors that we know of, but things have not been great there. So would that president be in a hurry to start a new search right now? Probably not. A lot of people are like, what's Ward Manuel going to do? Ward Manuel needs to get a new coach at Michigan. He needs to do a job as athletic director. He needs to make changes. Dude, Harbaugh hired Ward Manuel. Harbaugh's the guy that brought Manuel in. So Manuel's not going to get rid of Harbaugh. Unless backed against the wall and he wants to keep his job, he can execute that thing, but that would be a turncoat thing against Harbaugh because Harbaugh brought him in. So, I don't know. It sure is intriguing. We'll have to wait and see. Harbaugh, we'll see. Maybe he'll do. Maybe he'll make a comeback. I'm not sure. I doubt it. But if he's back, how many people will go with him to the pumpkin patch? The great, believe in the great pumpkin again next fall. I'm not sure. I'll talk more about him some other day, but I don't know. We'll do that some other day. MSU Spartans 777 from New Hudson, Michigan says, what are your season-ending grades for the following? The offense, the defense, special teams, coaching, and recruiting. Special teams, it's got to be Coughlin was good. Other than that, punting was, punt coverage was not good. Kickoff return didn't do anything positive. Kickoff coverage was not good. So that's a D-. Defense, it went down the drain a little bit later in the year. Take the Ohio State game out, you're a 2-4 team. Defense, start to finish, was a 2-4 defense. It was pretty good against Northwestern and Michigan, not good in some of the other games. Hurt by turnovers, of course. Offense, same thing. So I think offense, they were 2-4. Defense, they were 2-4. Coaching, probably 2-4. Recruiting, I don't know, 2-4. I mean, that's what the record is. So coaching, could they have been? Do you expect them to be better than 2-4 with that record? Beating Penn State. Penn State was pretty good by the end of the year. I wouldn't say 2-4 coaching. I'd say 3-3 coaching. I mean, you'd expect them to be more competitive against those teams, but they did play the 5 best teams in the Big Ten, back to back. I mean, the best teams in the Big Ten: Indiana, Iowa, Ohio State, Northwestern, Penn State. Michigan State's the only team that played all 5. Michigan State's the only team that played 4 of them.
Call from
No.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, if you're gonna prank the
To
show,
accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
if you're gonna prank the show, don't sound like you're 11. Nothing wrong with trying, but you gotta do better than that. Banks from balmy Beverly Hills, Michigan says, what is your bachelorette engagement prediction? I don't have one. Laugh out loud, he says. All right, he says, what's the real upside for Russo? Can he run too? Yeah, he can run a little bit. He's not like going to run around like Justin Fields, but he can run a little bit. He says, seems to throw some picks, and Temple was not in the Big Ten. Will he beat out Thorne or serve as a needed mentor? Also, will Theo Day leave? Merry Christmas to you and you all. Thanks. That's from Banks in balmy Beverly Hills, Michigan. Will he beat out Thorne? I don't know. It's going to be great competition. It's going to make spring football a lot more interesting. And Mel Tucker's going to preside over the practices, and they'll go through 15 practices, and he will not tell us a thing as to who's winning that competition. We will see it for ourselves in the green-white game. And I'm hoping we can all go. I hope there is a green-white game. I hope we can all go watch and view it for ourselves. And if they both play, it'll be the best quarterback competition green-white game since Cousins against Keith Nickel. And that green-white game battle was dead nuts even. Remember that? They each threw for like 320 yards. Did good things. Problem is, you don't want offenses to dominate the spring game, because your defense needs to be ahead of your offense in the green-white game, spring game. Cousins and Nickel were good, but the defense next season was not good. Cousins won the job. They went 7-6, 6-7, lost to Central Michigan, played Texas Tech in the Alamo Bowl, lost. But Nickel, like I said earlier, Russo reminds me of Keith Nickel a little bit. He's got a compact arm circle, arm delivery. He's more. He looks like Keith Nichols. He looks like Keith Nichols, Meridian, Mississippi.
Call from
Amber.
Does no one have his own idea?
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
Amber, we're going to put you on SpartanMag.com. How you doing?
Hey, what's up, man?
Doing good, Amber. Welcome to Spartan Mag Live, the call-in show. We've not heard from you before. I didn't recognize your number or your name. Normally, when that happens, I'm kind of worried about teenage pranksters calling in. But we took a chance on Amber. Sounded very credible, so we went with you. You're a Michigan
Right.
State fan?
Yeah, let me actually tell you why and how I'm calling you. I have an 11-year-old son,
Okay.
and he got this number, I guess, from his 11-year-old buddy, and used his dad's work phone to call and hung up as soon as we caught him. So I was like, okay, what is he doing? Who's he calling? So that's how I got the number, and that's why I called.
Okay, Amber. I appreciate it. You're live right now, by the way, on a YouTube chat channel.
Oh my gosh, I'm
so,
sorry.
that's
but,
okay.
Yeah, 11-year-old boy. So
That I was 11
Yeah.
once upon a time, and it's perfectly understandable. Thanks for calling in and clearing the air on that.
yeah, no problem. You have a good night. Thanks for taking the call.
Also, you too. Happy holidays. Thanks, Amber.
Yep. Bye.
Well, I guess maybe I shouldn't have taken that call, but usually we recognize the people's names when they call in, and we had to see what Amber had to say, right? She didn't seem like a Michigan State fan. Obviously, she wasn't. We didn't know her name, didn't have that caller enthusiasm usually when someone's calling in to talk about sports. But just out of curiosity, I had to bring her in to see what she had to talk about. For a minute there, I thought I might be in trouble for something. But anyway, maybe it's time to just wrap up the show. Let me go back over some of these comments here in the chat area, and then we'll wrap it up for the night. All right, Chris Train, I'm talking about, man, that's a blast from the past, Charlie Baggett. What the hell happened to him? I'm not sure. He's out of coaching now. He coached at Tennessee for a while. He recruited against Michigan State trying to get Charles Rogers back in the old days. Mr. Bowman says, no way we beat the Badgers if we play like we did the other night. I agree. Spartan Dude 313 says, exactly. You need a guy to get to the big dance. Otherwise, we are just pretenders. I think you're talking about quarterback. I don't know. Detroit Spartan says, Baggett is working in the private sector in Georgia, not coaching football anymore. Spartan Dude 313 says, OMG, I was so mad watching the Northwestern game. We were as bad as those uniforms. Terrence says, Wisconsin is going to be formidable in the tournament. I see them as a Sweet 16 team at least. We'll know more about Wisconsin as they go, but they are different. I mean, Wisconsin's always Wisconsin, right? But I get back to the fact that they've got 5 guys that can shoot threes. Kaminsky could shoot threes back when he was a center. But it's so hard to play defense on a team when all 5 guys can shoot three-pointers because you can't help off of anybody. And like I said, they do it off of screen pop action as opposed to dribble kick action. Either way, it's tough to stop. MSU number 1 fan says, is Rocky okay from the hit in the Ohio State game? I think so. I mean, he was at the Penn State game. He was not in uniform, but he was there, and he was fired up, trying to help his teammates. Chris Trinum says, painful to watch him versus Michigan State during his run at Penn State, talking about Taylor Battle. Chris Trinum says, we do have a history of making Northwestern players look godly. Coble, Sherna, Vic Law. Can't argue with that. Spartan Dude 313 says, Izzo said we struggled against U of D because of lack of tape on them. Come on, man. Well, Izzo's a big tape guy. He's a big scouting report guy. And there were players for U of D that were making shots that Michigan State defenders weren't as prepared for, and that's where you get the YMCA thing, where you score, I score, you score, I score. There's no film. Izzo's big on knowing your scouting report collectively, individually, all that stuff. It's a big part of the thing. Doors Fan 91 says, Watts, an early NBA laughable. He is early to the NBA is laughable. He's 6'2". Doors Fan 91 says, you think Mel Tucker makes another run at Vince Morrow out of Kentucky? I don't know. What's Morrow coach at Kentucky? Running backs? Could he coach special teams? I don't know. What was his contract at Kentucky? Was it a 2-year deal? Multi-year deal? Good question. Not sure. Talking about Kentucky now. Lift Mango says that Logan Murray from Flint Powers is a good pickup. You know what? We talked about him in last week here during the show. with Corey Robinson. Logan Murray, center from Flint Powers, 6'2", but quick and sturdy and physical and motor and nasty. Yeah, if he were 6'4", he'd be a high 3-star. Teams passed over him because of his height, right? That's the deal with any walk-on situation. There's always a defect of some sort. Sometimes the defect is nobody saw his film, or he lived somewhere that no one scouted him. But Logan Murray, I've not looked at his senior film, but his junior film, when he committed to Michigan State during the summer or late spring, I was like, wow. First of all, I don't remember a walk-on ever committing in the spring before his senior year, which he did. Secondly, it had been a while since I looked at walk-on offensive line film and thought, man, this guy can play. A lot of times walk-on offensive linemen might be guys that are a little bit awkward or, need a little thin or just, that defect, right? Maybe they're got good size, but they don't move real well. This guy moved well, tough physical, good fundamentals, just not real tall, but at center, can you get away with that? Maybe. But I agree, good pickup, an interesting one. My hit rate on predicting good walk-ons at the offensive line position is not great. There have been some others over the years that I thought had a chance to do something that didn't. But I like that kid. I like his chances. Lift Mango says, how is he only a 2-star? He's legit. Lift Mango's sparking my interest here a little bit because I agree that Murray kid from Flint Powers, the walk-on center, was excellent. Is Powers still alive in the playoffs? I don't think they are. Darn. A lot of Michigan State players are still alive in the playoffs. We posted about that last night. East Lansing High School, they're still in it with Ethan Boyd, the offensive tackle, Michigan State commitment. Tyson Watson's team at Canton, they're still alive. Derek Harmon, the defensive tackle from Detroit Loyola, they are still alive in the Division 7 playoffs. It's strange that Oak Park is still alive with Prim, the running back, and Rayshon Benny, the lineman. They're playing, I think, Livonia Churchill, I think. Strange that high school practice just got back underway in the state of Michigan on Monday, December 21st, and it was cold. And they'll be playing January 2nd on Saturdays and January 9th at home venues in the cold. I think Iron Mountain is scheduled to host a game on January 2nd. I'm glad those kids have a chance to play. I hope that they're healthy. I hope they enjoy it. I'm a little concerned about them. Division 1, you've got Cass Tech against Belleville. That's going to be a good one. They're both 9-0. West Bloomfield at 8-1 against Romeo. West Bloomfield has some underclassmen of interest, including Dylan Tatum. Davison High School, defending state champion, playing Detroit Catholic Central, a pair of undefeated teams. Also Division 1, so that's an interesting one with those teams. Division 2, there's more Michigan State teams. More teams with Michigan State ties. East Lansing against Muskegon Mona Shores. January 2nd at East Lansing High School. No fans allowed to play. Ethan Boyd, Michigan State commitment in that one. Oak Park is 4-5 against Livonia Churchill, 6-2. This is in Division 2. And Warren Mott with Tyson Watson is playing Warren De La Salle. Warren Mott is 7-1. So of the 8 teams remaining in Division 2, 3 of them have Michigan State commitments. Solid chance that in the state title game, there might be a couple Spartans in the Division 2 state championship game. Although Ethan Boyd is enrolling early at Michigan State. So if East Lansing High School makes it to the state title game, expected to be at Ford Field the weekend of January 15th, 16th, he might already be enrolling in Michigan State. He might not be able to play in the state championship game if they make it that far. Let's go back over here to the chat area and wrap this thing up. Lift Mango still talking about Logan Murray out of Flint Power, says his senior year tape was very impressive, very underrated. I've not seen his senior tape. His junior tape was very impressive and very underrated. And if you're telling me the senior tape's better than his junior tape, then I respect the information you're bringing. Lift Mango. Detroit Spartan says, let's hope so. Has that Flint blood in him. Talking about Logan Murray. He says, wanted to be a Spartan. Tough kid. Works hard. All good signs. So he wanted to be a Spartan. That's why he commits and takes that preferred walk-on back in spring before his senior year. I've never seen anything like it. It's great. Good for him. He's quick. He's tough. Doors Fan 91 says, Dave Urema played in it, talking about the blue-gray game. Yeah, that would have been 1986. Michigan State was 6-5, did not go to a bowl game. They beat Minnesota. Minnesota went 6-5. Minnesota went to a bowl game. Michigan State didn't go to a bowl game. That wasn't fair. Lorenzo White was injured for half that season. Aloha Bowl was Christmas Day. Played Hawaii. That was Christmas Day. It was also Christmas Day when Michigan State was blown out by Washington in 1997. Seth Foreman said, I don't know what you guys are arguing about something. Oh, probably talking about whether the Sun Bowl was on Christmas. Troy Thibodeau says, I'd rather watch college basketball than NBA on Christmas any day. Troy Thibodeau, I think a lot of people would agree with you, and I think that's what the Big Ten is making that play, to get on there and get in front of people and do it that way. Can't do it every year because you're not going to ask your college kids to play on Christmas Day every season. The pros do it because they're pros. They get paid. College kids, you can't ask them to do it. You already asked them to do too much. I mean, they get good benefits on a lot of other things, but this is a different year. They knew they would not be sending their players home due to the COVID semi-bubble situation. So, hey, if you're going to be home, let's play on Christmas Day. Big Ten took advantage, and it's a great year for the Big Ten to do it because the Big Ten's got a lot of compelling matchups, great teams up and down the roster. Sparty7779 said Sun Bowl on Christmas Day in 82, 86, and 87. I thought it was more often than that. I thought it was like every year. 82, I remember, well, the Sun Bowl, there was a year when Penn State, was it the Fiesta Bowl? Kurt Warner was the running back, scored on the first play of the game. I think that was Christmas Day. Was that Sun Bowl or was that Fiesta Bowl? I can't remember. Chris Trinum says Keeler, yeah. Trying to think who the right tackle was in 2015. Talking about, I don't know what you're talking about here. Horst and Joyner were no-brainers, Detroit Spartan says. Chris Trinum says agree, both were slam dunks. Talking about Lisa Ben-Kaim. Gordon Tenona says the 2021 schedule is out. I missed this. So, is Michigan State playing at Michigan again? Is that what's going on? I don't know. We'll talk about it next week. I don't want to look it up here. Hula Bowl was Christmas Day. Sun Bowl was New Year's Eve. So, am I going to lose that bet? I was thinking like Sun Bowl was on CBS every year for like 40 years. And I thought it was Christmas Day. I'm talking like back in the 70s and 80s. I don't doubt that they moved it to New Year's Eve at some point. Hula Bowl was an all-star game. Aloha Bowl was every Christmas. A&M against North Carolina. Thank you. So that's who A&M's playing. So if A&M loses to North Carolina, I don't want to hear that stuff. That rant that I did earlier about the SEC, go ahead and put it, play that over my thoughts on A&M and North Carolina. Just Bigger says 2021 can be found, but it will be changed. We will play Michigan at home. We will play Indiana on the road. Same dates. Just Bigger sounds like he knows something I don't know. Stroker says, love Thorne, but have a hard time believing the job isn't Russo's to lose. Stroker had an interesting question over at Underground Bunker message board. Let me see if I can find it. I didn't have a real good answer just yet. Maybe I'll save that for the next one. Stroker, I'm going to save that question for next time. Remind me. Chris Trinum with the personal sponsorship. Appreciate that. Thanks, Chris. Again, appreciate that. Detroit Spartan says, not a good look. These are college kids. It's deeper than how good they are. It's about making them part of the community. Better people that'll contribute down the road. Getting philosophical on us in the holiday season. Appreciate that, Detroit Spartan. Yeah, Stroker makes a good point about if Russo's coming in, it must be his job to lose. Tucker's going to say, hey, it's competition. You got to compete every single day. Doesn't matter who started last year, last game. You have to compete today. He'll say that every day. That's going to be an interesting situation. I thought Thorne showed a lot of good stuff. But you need a good second stringer. Whoever doesn't win that battle is going to be a highly capable second stringer, and then Thorne has 3 more seasons after next season if he wants it, because that last season didn't count for anybody. Dan Fernandez says, Comp's right. Sun Bowl was always on Christmas Day. Thank you, Dan Fernandez. You know, these people, I was starting to like question my own knowledge on that thing. It was always Christmas Day. I guess I'm just older than some of you guys. So I remember it that way. And Nils was like, no, whatever. And this other guy's like, no, it was New Year's Eve. Well, maybe in the 90s. I don't know, 2000s, 2010s. I'm not sure. It was New Year's Eve when Michigan State played Stanford at the Sun Bowl. Lost 38-0. Had a good New Year's Eve that year in El Paso. Had a good time. Gordon Tonona saying Comp is not right. Dan Fernandez says Comp is right. Don't know. I think I'm right. Stroker says, if I'm not mistaken, Spartans beat South Carolina in the 1990 Sun Bowl on New Year's Eve. Yeah. That was that New Year's Eve day against USC. I'm talking like in the years before that. We were talking about like when I was a kid, Christmas Day, Sun Bowl was on. Then they switched it to New Year's Eve later. I don't know who you're talking about here. He says he's not a football guy at all. They hate each other. Oh, talking about the president and Harbaugh. Yeah. Yeah, and so if you're president of Michigan and Harbaugh is like rotting on the vine, do you just kind of let him rot and enjoy it and realize and feel like, you know, good, this puts football in its place a little bit? And then Ward Manuel, he's not going to make a move. And donors might be upset about what's going on, but you got a president that might not be in a hurry to change things because he's probably getting a kick out of watching jackass Harbaugh rot on the vine. Then you got Ward Manuel's not going to make a change because Harbaugh brought him in. So if an NFL team does not go after Harbaugh, Harbaugh doesn't want to sign the new contract that's been put in front of him because it's less money. He can make more money if he actually wins something. That'll be the incentives. But it looks like a lose-lose-lose for everybody. Except for the president, who might want, if he does want football to know where its place is. I don't know. It's fascinating. I'm not going to say anything more about Harbaugh right now. I've got some thoughts some other time, maybe. Dan Fernandez says, never mind, the Aloha Bowl, or whatever it's called, was always played Christmas Day. The Aloha Bowl, yes, it was. Sun Bowl was usually on New Year's Eve. He said, well, usually, I'm done talking about it. Well, I can look it up. Someone can look it up. Angelo Gross Enthusiast is asking for names to look for in the portal, including Jermaine Johnson. I don't know. The Horst thing came out of nowhere. We will try to keep our ear to the ground and try to provide some information on maybe what's going on in the portal, but right now I'm not hearing anything. Doors fan 91 talking about which players in the portal for Michigan State might be moving on. He says Parks Kissinger, Javez Alexander, Theo Day, Khalifa, names I can see moving along. I would agree with all those, yeah. Would Theo Day want to change positions? I think he could play tight end if he wanted to. How much does he love football? I don't know. But yeah, I agree. Those would be the ones that would be borderline. Okay, now here's the Amber call. All right. Yeah. That was interesting. She was calling from Mississippi, by the way. That call is from Mississippi. All right, I'm going to skip over a couple of these things. Peyton Thorne's 325 yards, set a new Michigan State record for quarterback yardage, beating Ed Smith 324 in 1978. Oh, by first game starter, not just a freshman. Right, okay. All right, I think we're all caught up. Detroit Spartan giving us some information about the next Detroit Lions coach. All right, I think that's going to do it. Hey, man, I appreciate everybody chiming in. Hope everybody has a great week of Christmas. Hope you're having a great holiday season. We're going to wrap it up. Big Michigan State basketball game on Friday against the Badgers. Thursday's Christmas Eve. I don't think we'll do SpartanMag Live again this week. Could have had some different decorations. Didn't have time to put it all together. I had this Christmas truck. I was going to try it out. Didn't do it. Maybe next week. Anyway, hey, thanks for the personal sponsorships. Thanks for calling in. And thanks for the chat questions. Thanks for the questions over at the Underground Bunker message board. Sorry I didn't get to all of them. I might put some aside and get to them next time. And we look forward to next time. It's going to be fun. Tough basketball game on Friday. Hope that Comet, Donner, and Blitzen are doing better with their ailments. And hope everybody has a great holiday season. And the holiday season will continue next week. But in the meantime, from all of us at SpartanMag.com to you and all of yours, we wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy all that stuff. And thanks for tuning in to SpartanMag.com, the call-in show, SpartanMag Live. We will see you next time. In the meantime, check us out over at SpartanMag.com, over at the Underground Bunker. Hope you'll become a subscriber real soon. Until next time, see you next time from East Lansing, Michigan. You've been watching SpartanMag Live.